It's February 2024 and I'm halfway through a frankly terrifying bike ride down the side of Spain's tallest volcano in the Canarian port of Los Cristianos. Located on the southwestern corner of the Canary island of Tenerife, the port town of Los Cristianos has a history dating back to the 16th century, though these days it forms the southern extent of a long stretch of beach resorts from Costa Adeje through Playa de las Americas. An important port for the south of Tenerife, it wasn't until the latter part of the 19th century and the ending of pirate raids on this part of the coast that the area became settled, with the threat of pirates and lack of any forts being a major inhibitor to anyone wanting to settle in the area. By 1888, the small fishing village was described as having 29 houses and a cave. With increasing industry and trade from the start of the 20th century and the harbour becoming the main import-export centre of the south of Tenerife, the population of Los Cristianos grew. From the 1910s onwards, agriculture came to the area with tomato and banana plantations opening to accompany the salt mines and fish salting and resin factories. In 1934, a new harbour was constructed in the bay that would allow for larger ships both for fishing and commercial shipping, with the port being expanded again in 1975 for the inauguration of ferry services to the neighbouring island of La Gomera. In 1956, a Swedish man, Bengt Reilander, came to Los Cristianos. Diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, he hoped the warm climate and clean air would ease his symptoms. He convalesced well and initially through friends in Sweden spread the word. By the early 1960s, the town had become a convalescence resort for Swedes, and shortly afterwards its popularity began to grow amongst other North European countries. Whilst tourism grew steadily in the 1960s and 70s, it was the opening of Tenerife's airport in autumn 1978 that really brought the tourism boom to the southern end of the island, with the largest invasion coming from Britain and Ireland, with Scandinavia and Germany not far behind. Today, tourism rules the roost in Los Cristianos, with the last banana crop having been harvested in the early 1990s. And whilst a small fishing fleet still operates in the harbour, the main activities are regular ferries to La Palma, La Gomera and El Herrero, as well as the scuba diving, pleasure fishing and, as I experienced, whale watching cruises. The deep 30-kilometre wide channel that separates Tenerife from La Gomera is home to around 400 short-fin pilot whales, as well as several pods of bottlenose dolphins. And while sightings for dolphins are rare, it's all but guaranteed if the weather is clear and the seas are calm that you'll come across a family of pilot whales, only a few miles off the coast of one of the most heavily developed seaside resorts in Africa. The whole of the sea area covered by the channel between La Gomera and Tenerife is designated a marine park and protected by law, and with modern boats abiding by no chase rules, the whales can choose whether to interact. With the engine cut and the boat just bobbing around in the Atlantic Ocean, the whales get close up, swimming around and under the boat. Along with the passive activities, Los Cristianos has also built up a reputation for more active pursuits, from kayaking and paddleboarding to paragliding, and perhaps most terrifying of all, cycling. Of course, cycling normally isn't terrifying, unless your route is 29 kilometres long with a 2.2 kilometre descent from close to the top of the tallest volcano in the EU all the way back to sea level. No pedalling, just 2 hours of constant gripping of the brake levers, hoping gravity and physics don't spot what you're up to. Cycling above the clouds and the views from the various stops along the way allow for short pauses in the terror. Along with a stop for cheese and wine tasting at a local bodega. It's just the final third of the ride represents over half a descent on roads with 25% gradients as you plummet from the final viewpoint down to the coast. But my main reason for visiting Los Cristianos was not to meet the whales, or my maker, but to head across that 30-kilometre strait and tick off my penultimate Canary island, La Gomera, on a tour that started and ended with a fast ferry crossing from Los Cristianos to the harbour in the capital, San Sebastián de La Gomera. It's a day trip that's popular either on a tour, with your own transport, or creating your own itinerary, and the 9:30 departure from Los Cristianos was pretty busy on the Thursday tour I was on. With a crossing time of just 50 minutes, the fast ferries of both Armas and Fred Olsen make short work of the crossing. Third smallest of the Canaries in terms of both population and size, La Gomera's shape, roughly round, rising to a high peak in the centre, mark it out as unmistakably volcanic, and from one very large volcano. The island was formed around 12 million years ago through a series of eruptions, some lasting for many years, others just months, as laid down in the rock structure of the island. The last eruption took place around 2 million years ago, and since then the role of shaping of La Gomera has been taken on by water, with deep ravines, gorges and valleys called barrancos carved into the sides of the mountain over the millennia, creating an appearance of an orange that's been cut in half and then split into segments. It leaves the island with a unique culture where villages and towns are only accessible by climbing high into the mountains to the top of a ravine and then back down into another, or by circumnavigating the island by sea. La Gomera is part of the reason for Los Cristianos having such a pleasant climate, as it protects the western coast of Tenerife from the trade winds that first hit the outer islands of La Palma, La Gomera and El Herrero. Travel due west from the edge of La Gomera and you won't hit land again until you reach the coast of Florida by Orlando, some 6,000 kilometres away. Those trade winds meet with the sides of the mountains between 700 and 1400 metres in altitude and help to create a cloud cover that envelops much of the upper part of the island for around 300 days a year, creating the unique Laura Silva subtropical rainforest environment. La Gomera's Garandrare National Park being added to the list of UNESCO's World Heritage Sites in 1986, beating its rival on Madeira by 13 years. Due to its position at the end of the known world, the island was an important provisioning place for Christopher Columbus before he departed west across the horizon in search for spice islands of the east. Today, the island has an area of around 370 square kilometres and a population of around 22,000 inhabitants, down from a peak of around 30,000 in the 1950s, with almost half that population living in the capital, main port and largest town, San Sebastián de La Gomera. After arrival on the island, the tour I booked onto transferred onto a minibus to take us around much of La Gomera, which started with a dramatic and rapid ascent out of the capital and into the mountains, ascending up the GM2 highway as it wraps its way around the edges of one of the many barrancos, climbing over 1,000 metres in a very short period of time. With each switchback on the road, we climb higher into the interior of the island, with the views initially opening out to show the sea, channel, and on the horizon the unmistakable shape of Mount Teide on Tenerife. Before turning inland away from the sea to climb even higher up the side of a different barranco, twisting and turning up to the very centre of the island with the two viewpoints of the Mirado Colgado and the Mirado de Los Roques. Both viewpoints sit at around 1,100 metres above sea level, and on a normal day would show off the peculiarities of the climate on the island, with a view from the Mirado Colgado looking northeast down the island, usually obscured by thick rolling clouds for more than 300 days a year. However, today was one of the 50 or so days a year where the skies were dry and clear. The reason for the clear skies was due to a kalima a few days earlier, a warm, sandy wind coming directly from the Sahara and passing over the island, but has since cleared, and with it taken a lot of the moisture from the atmosphere, preventing the trade winds from forming the regular wall of cloud that we should have witnessed. We should have crossed the road, passing through the cloud bank to reveal unbroken views of the Mirado de Los Roques looking southwest down another ravine, but instead we had crystal clear views from both directions. It's a hard life. Back onto the minibus as we journeyed further into the countryside of La Gomera, taking some of the back roads to the southwest of the island. Before stopping for a coffee in the small village of Temacodá. And then on to the neighbouring village of El Cercado to visit the local museum dedicated to the traditional clay pots that have been produced in the area for centuries, with the entire process from extracting the clay to final shaping all undertaken by hand with simple stone and metal tools. The museum explains the process, showing examples of the types of pots created and the basic stages of production from clay lump to delicate pot. Just over a kilometre outside of town and you reach the Mirador Punta del Belete at the top of another barranco looking down almost due west. From the way the walls of the ravine have been carved by the millennia of water, you can make out the different layers of rock that have been lain down by countless volcanic eruptions over 10 million years, from the long eruptions leaving deep thick layers of rock at the bottom to the thinner bands of rock showing shorter, only weeks-long eruptions towards the top. Back almost to the centre of the island and the Laurus silva of La Lagunda Grande. This almost unique laurel rainforest environment only occurs with right climatic conditions and at the right altitude. Regular, mild in both temperature and forced rain at an elevation between 700 and 1400 metres. Impressive to walk through in the bright sunshine of the day when the trade winds aren't rolling the clouds in, perhaps unbelievably creepy in a day of thick fog rolling between the limbs of the trees with moss almost dripping off the branches. After lunch amidst the laurel silver, it's back on for bus to the northernmost viewpoint of the island at the Mirado de Abrante, 420 metres up above the small town of Juego. And if you're okay keeping your lunch down, why not step out onto the glass-bottom viewing platform? And then 2 kilometres back up the road to the Centro de Visitantes, Juego de Bolas, to look around the recreation of a traditional Gomeran house and to find out about the unique whistling language of the island, as well as time to briefly explore the small botanic garden showing examples of the fauna of the island. From here, it's a 50-minute drive back towards San Sebastián, initially descending down the 420 metres into the town of Juego, first on a narrow back road before turning onto the main GM1 highway as it snakes its way down to the village on the north coast of the island. And after riding along the coast for a little while, turning at Hermanguna, back up another barranco to climb 500 metres back up into the mountains and a set of tunnels through the peaks before a winding descent back down into the capital. We arrived back in San Sebastián with enough time to spare before the ferry back to Los Cristianos to have a brief explore of the Gomeran capital, with the main sites and the town hall to the church linked along the main Calle Real. The Iglesia de La Asunción, or Mother Church of the Assumption, is the main church of the entire island. Originally built as a hermitage in the 15th century, the current structure dates from the 18th century when major renovations were undertaken. It's then just the short walk back from the centre of town to the harbour to pick up the 17:30 fast ferry back across the waters to Tenerife, taking in a final view of the island as we leave port. Los Cristianos is located 15 kilometres west of Tenerife South Airport, linked by half-hourly buses, which take around 20 minutes. Tenerife is a popular destination, particularly during the winter months, from Northern Europe, with flights back to most major cities in the UK, Ireland, Scandinavia, the Low Countries, France and Germany. Due to all those links, intercontinental connections available through any of the major European hubs, such as London Heathrow, Amsterdam Schiphol, Frankfurt, Oslo, Copenhagen or Stockholm.